So this is the Cuban tree frog. It's from Cuba, and they've been introduced into Florida through the plant and nursery trade. So these guys have been sitting on plants, and when they get shipped over to the U.S., these guys came along with the plants. Pretty much the entire peninsula of Florida, you'll be able to find these Cuban tree frogs. As you can see, pretty good jumpers. They're very strong and athletic frogs. And the problem with that is, well, there you go. The problem with that is they outcompete all our native species. So when these guys get to breeding, they breed in the same areas as the green tree frogs, the squirrel tree frogs, and all the barking tree frogs. They breed in these same areas. And when they get together like that, the females will get a lot bigger than this guy here. They actually get about the size of the palm of my hand. And they can actually eat other tree frogs that are native to Florida. And so that's no good, because these big females are coming in and taking the energy out of the ecosystem and to put into their breeding. And they're directly competing with our other tree frogs. And so they become a big problem. And these guys have just absurd appetites. This guy right here, he'll try and eat anything that's about half the size of his body, or even bigger actually. The best way to identify these tree frogs is they have a crazy variation of pattern. This guy, you can see he's got a lot of blotchy spots on him, and very well camouflaged on here. Oh, I love how the stripes on his legs line up when they're folded. That's so cool. But anyway, so basically these guys are always going to have little bumps on their back. You can see it there. And this is what makes it different from any other tree frog in Florida. Because there are other tree frogs that look a lot like this. One is the pine woods tree frog, will look a lot like this guy right here. But it's not going to have those spots. Also, you can look under the belly. Oh, buddy. Their belly is pretty much going to be white, and then on the side they've got a real faint yellow thing right here. So we really don't want these guys in Florida. As you can see, as he's sitting here on the stick, they have excellent camouflage. And so they're getting preyed on less than our native tree frogs. And another thing is they secrete a mucus from their skin that's toxic to a lot of animals and even humans. So if I were to lick this animal, it would make me really sick, and it'd just be an unpleasant experience altogether. And they're also really great at hiding. And one of their favorite places to hide is in these bromeliads here. This is one that I took out of my tank that I've got in my room. And in this bromeliad, I've got 3 Cuban tree frogs, and they're just hanging out in there. And you can see one sitting right there. And so when they're sitting in these bromeliads, they're basically invisible to any predators. And one of their main predators here in Florida is the ribbon snakes and the garter snakes. Those are some of the few animals that will eat these. Also, there's probably a few species of birds that will prey on them as well. But there's not a whole lot of animals here in Florida that are eating them. So their populations have grown to just huge numbers. And I'm finding these guys a lot more than I'm finding a lot of our native tree frogs, which is really unfortunate, because I have to go out into the middle of nowhere just to find some barking tree frogs, green tree frogs, or even squirrel tree frogs, because these guys are coming in and taking over. So we've got to come up with a solution for this problem. The animal itself, I mean, it's a really cool animal. It's not really hazardous to us, but it's really hazardous to our ecosystems. And Florida has taken a pretty bad beating in our ecosystems, especially with frogs and reptiles. And so our job as people that understand what's going on here is to help our native species by taking these out of the wild. Now, I don't like to kill animals, but I was reading on the University of Florida's website, and one thing they told you to do is capture these in a plastic bag and then apply benzocaine to them. You can either apply it to their back or their belly, and that'll knock them out. And you want at least a solution with at least 20% benzocaine. And so you apply it to the back of the belly, and that'll knock them out. And once you do that, you put them back in the bag and throw them in the freezer, and it's basically a painless death for the tree frog. And so once he's frozen, you can take him out, thaw him out. I would encourage you to dissect the animal and see where its organs are, but you can just throw it out if you're not interested in that. And that's one way to get rid of them. Personally, what I do is whenever I see one, I catch it, and I have a terrarium in my room, and it's called the invasive terrarium. So anything invasive that I can catch, I put it in there. And so it's funny because these guys are actually cannibalistic. And so I had a big female in there, and it had been eating other Cuban tree frogs of this. So the same species is eating the same species. So I'm using Cuban tree frogs to cut down on the Cuban tree frog population. And and also I've been putting some geckos and there's a greenhouse frog that's invasive. And so I've been putting any small invasive animal in there. And basically that big female is eating all the other animals. But these guys have been surviving pretty well along with the big female. And so I put in crickets and stuff for them. And what's cool about these guys is they're not picky at all about what to eat. So you can put almost any type of bug in there or any small animal. I put a gecko in there, it got eaten. And so they're not picky at all, they're easy to feed, and they make great pets. They're very hard to kill, and they can go a long time without even eating. And so they're just absolutely incredible when it comes to survival. And so that makes for a good pet, but it's something very bad to have in the wild in Florida.